Hello, everybody, and welcome to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is master podcaster, the man in the studio, the man that makes all of this happen, my good friend, my comrade in sobriety, Dan the Man, everybody. Dan the Man, say hello to all the beeps out there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast.
We are so glad you're with us today. We are going to talk about your spiritual condition and the maintenance and what the hell that even means. But if you are not in a good fit condition, we hope that you will leave this podcast feeling in a better fit condition. And what that even means, we'll explain by the end of the podcast. If you're new to joining us, this is an all things recovery podcast, which Dan and I have started out of the goodness of our heart to try and give back and offer the tools that we've been so freely given in the 12-Step Fellowship Program, which we believe we have the greatest toolkit to succeed and to thrive in life that is out there. There's no doubt about it. If you have a problem, you could call me or Dan, right, Dan?
That's right.
And I could say, you know what? If I don't have experience with that, probably one of my guys does. I could reach out, and I also have these tools that I can use. This tool, it works. And where else can you get that for free in life? Everybody wants to sell a book, wants to sell a seminar. I know one of my friends just did, well, I won't say who it was, but it's a very famous positive thinker seminar over 3 days for 10 hours a day on Zoom, 10 hours a day on Zoom, 3 days in a row. And I don't know, she paid an ungodly amount of money for it. So you get that for free here. So hopefully stick around. You'll get some tools you can use in life. Today we're going to talk about the condition of your condition. And there's an old song that was in my mind when I used to hear all the time on the radio, AM radio back in the day.
I know what you're talking about.
When I was a kid, called Just Dropped In to see what condition my condition was in. And guess what? Do you know who wrote that? You have no idea.
I have no idea.
Guess who it is? Kenny Rogers.
Oh, really?
Kenny Rogers, and the First Edition is the name of the band. Can you believe that? 1967, but I just wanted to read the first few lines because obviously he's writing this about alcoholics and addicts if you listen closely. He says, I woke up this morning with the sundown shining in. When did you wake up with the sunset or sundown shining in? I found my mind in a brown paper bag within. I tripped on a cloud and fell 8 miles high. I tore my mind on a jagged sky. And I just dropped in to see what my condition was in. So if you're with us today, hang on. We're going to help you with what your condition is and how to treat it. All right, so we're taught in the program that our entire life, our entire happiness, whether or not we're going to have serenity, whether or not we're going to feel comfortable in our own skin today, is based on my spiritual condition, but it's a misleading wordage. And I don't, what else could have Bill done in the 1930s to describe it? I think it might have been better. Again, here we are on tricky ground saying better than what Bill Wilson came up with. But maybe it might have been better to say, what's my inner condition? Which is the heart of the whole matter, right? Everything that I feel inside, everything I'm thinking and dwelling on, all of my resentments, all of my stuff from yesterday, all the projections I have about tomorrow, that's not occurring on the outside of me. I might show it, but it's occurring on the inside of me. And in our sister program of 12-Step Fellowship, where we offer the 12-step meetings to anybody, you don't have to have a label like alcoholic or addict or any of that. We have a saying that we mean your spirit, your soul, or your innermost essence. They're all the same thing, right? But we get hung up on that word spiritual and spirit because of our training from childhood about religion, and we think it means religious. And so I, too, when I came in this program, thought, oh, you guys are talking about whether or not I'm praying. So I just need to pray, make sure I'm doing my thing, maybe go to church, right? All that shit. And that's what I thought, literally, when they're talking about it's dependent on the maintenance of your spiritual condition, whether or not you're going to stay sober. And I was listening to a speaker recently who was talking about, made a very succinct point. He says, how many of you in this room think God is keeping you sober? And people were afraid to raise their hand, but some did. And he said, well, if God was keeping us sober, the big book would be one page. It would say, find God, end of story. But you will notice the big book is made up of a lot of pages. This one right here, see all these pages? And it deals with our inner condition. Every single chapter, especially in the beginning of the book, is dealing with what is going on inside the mind and the body and soul of alcoholics, but in general, human beings, right? Every quality that every quality that an addict or an alcoholic has, it's just a more extreme measure of that quality. All people feel fear. All people have resentment. All people have guilt and shame and jealousy, right? But we have it to an extreme degree. So there's two things about that statement I missed. First, I missed the spiritual side. I thought, okay, he's talking about my spirit, but we're not. We're talking about something much deeper than that. Hang on, I'll explain that during the podcast here. The second thing I missed is it says it's contingent on our maintenance. And for those of you who are new in the program, this is saying you do not have to be spiritual at all, and you can still stay sober. Now, that's a bold statement, but stick with me. I'll explain. It means you can be having the worst day of your life. You can be rolling through it, wanting to kill everybody on earth and wanting to kill yourself. But if you still use the tools and you still go to your meeting, you still call your sponsor and share what's going on, you will stay sober. I'm a living proof of that. I've lived 41 years in recovery, and I've had a lot of bad days. And my friend Dan can attest to that because I call him with a lot of them. And you have to vent that stuff off of you. Next week, I'm going to touch on the dark energy topic. I keep saying that, but next week we are going to do that. You have to vent that energy off of you, right? But if I'm not using the tools, I'm going to fall back to my old habits, which is my character defects, my addictions, the things that are bad for me, to cope and to numb out my feelings, right? So we're talking about working some kind of program, working some kind of toolkit to maintenance my condition. So let's begin here. How was your condition this morning when you woke up? I want you to go back to the first moment your alarm clock went off this morning. Think about how you felt. Think about what your first thought of the day was. Dan, do you have any idea at all what went through your head when your alarm clock went off first thing this morning?
Well, this particular morning, I beat my alarm clock by about an hour. So I meant to get up at 7:30, and I woke up at 6:30. My first thought was, can I get some more sleep?
I think that would be a very acceptable and common thought for all of us first thing in the morning. I think my first thought of the morning was, I got a lot to do today, And you got a father in the hospital right now,
Yeah,
right?
that was my first stop this morning.
Mm-hmm. So that begins your condition for the day. It's sort of like setting you off on a right or wrong foot, right? And then as we go through our morning, we start thinking about, our fears, our worries, the future, our ambitions, all that kind of stuff, our past, things we regret from yesterday. And we're building our inner state to a point that whatever's going to hit us from there on the outside is going to be determined by where I'm at on the inside, right? Makes sense? So, you could come at me and you could say, hi, how are you? Good morning. And if I'm in a state that's not a fit state, I'm going to bark back at you in my head. I won't say it in person maybe because I don't want to get fired, but that's been many mornings when I've been rolling in and traffic was bad and people are driving like crazy idiots and I come in there like, don't even talk to me. I just need to get behind my desk, open up my Zoom and get to work. And everybody say, hey, good morning.
Good morning.
And you just want to just go, Urgh. Now, I'm smart enough and been long enough in recovery. I know that's me today. I used to think it was them. I used to think, how dare you be a morning person? How dare you be so damn happy first thing in the morning? But now today I know that's me. That's because my spiritual condition was affected by traffic, so now I'm reacting that way to them. If, however, Christopher happened to get up 10 minutes earlier and he has more time to just sort of chill out and not rush like a madman to work at the last second, I might have come in there and said, well, good morning to you. How are you doing? Then they'd be complaining about me, right? So if you're not picking up what I'm saying here, your inner condition will determine your destiny based on how often, what states of mind, what feelings, what memories, whatever you're nurturing inside all day long. And for those of you that work jobs where you're kind of brainless on the job, I have a lot of people in my group who work for a factory, and they tell me they feel like robots. It gives you way too much to dwell on what's going on your inner condition. And that inner condition, again, is going to define your fate in life. So we want to give you some tools today to sort of deal with that, understand what we're talking about. And I'm going to defer to the textbook to share a little something with you that my sponsor shared with me about our condition. There's a lot of statements in here that Bill Wilson makes about the alcoholic or addict before they find sobriety. He talks about in his own story that he was swallowed by self-pity and the bitter morass spread around him like quicksand. Very, very, very evocative phrase he uses there. Obviously, he talks about resentment and all that stuff. But there's a page on page 52 when he starts talking about these things that are called the bedevilments. And I had never heard that term till I was sometime in sobriety. But within one paragraph, he sums up the state of almost every addict or alcoholic who enters my group, and how I was, and how Dan was, and how all of our friends are out there before we find recovery. And so I would ask you all that are not addicts or alcoholics, really think about these states that he's describing and how they might apply to you, maybe not as extreme as an alcoholic or addict who's at his last days of drinking, but think about your morning and think about today, think about your past week, and how were you in each of these states? So he says, all right, we were having trouble with our personal relationships. Anybody out there struggling with some of your relationships? Anybody having any friction with a coworker, with a family member, somebody you're not talking to, somebody you refuse to call back? Again, we were having trouble with our personal relationships. That's probably the most clear sign that Christopher or Dan or anybody else is out of sorts. When I start getting that friction feedback from people, then I'm like, oh, okay, it's probably me. I was in treatment way back in the old days, 83, and they said, if the first person you encounter calls you an ass, don't worry about it. You second person that calls you an ass, you might want to think about it. You see a third person that calls you an ass, you better look behind you because you got a tail. And I was like, oh, okay, that's clever. And so, yes, personal relationships. And again, there's no such thing as perfection in those. I think that's one of the hardest things to do in life as human beings is navigate our relationships. We have needs. We all want to be intimate and have relationships with other people, but then they have their own egos and they have their own needs and they have their own desires, and then you have to make those fit. That's the hardest thing in life, period. Second thing, we could not control our emotional natures. Anybody flip another driver the bird this past week? Anybody yell at the phone when it interrupted you when you were doing something important? Get mad at a solicitor calling you? Some solicitor called my boss today and he put it on speakerphone and the guy was trying to sell him who knows what. And my boss always tries to order a pepperoni pizza from the guy and the guy gets very confused. Never mind, it's a side story. So we could not control our emotional natures. Now that also not just means having a fit, but it also means, if you wake up in the morning and you're just in a snitty mood and you start passing it on to everybody else. If I'm miserable, I'm going to make other people miserable. Screw it. I'm going to determine to have a bad day because I can't control my depression or I can't control my mood I'm in. How about this one? We were prey to misery and depression. Misery is being sold by our headlines all day long. So if you watch the news, that's what they're selling you is misery. They're trying to make you miserable. They want you so miserable that you'll buy a consumer product to fix it. And depression is the opposite of expression. It means I just feel stuck. I feel like I don't have any motivation. I'm completely out of it. Next one. We couldn't make a living. Now, addicts and alcoholics know that one very well. I heard a speaker, though, describe that says it doesn't mean we can't make money. It means we can't manage it well, and we can't seem to make a living, like do well in life and stay there. Many addicts or alcoholics can go like gangbusters for 6 months, and we just had somebody in our group recently who did well for a year and then just blew it all to hell in a glorified relapse. And that's not making a living. That's called supernova effect. You come on strong and you get all this money and then you blow it in a hotel room with hookers. That's not a good idea. But we couldn't make a living. How are you doing on making a living in life and just sort of having balance and doing well in all your areas? We had a feeling of uselessness. How many of you out there are actually doing something for somebody else today? Now, Dan and I are doing this podcast as a service work thing. Did you call anybody today and see how they were doing without expecting to have to tell them what's going on in your day? You know how we do that? We call them and it's like, I got this full agenda of things I want to tell them, but I'll be nice and I'll say, how are you doing first? And then I can't wait till they shut up so I can tell them what I want to do. But we had a feeling of uselessness. That means the opposite of being useful to people. Did you do anything today or in the past week for anybody else? That can be a real one-way trip to feeling depression when you're totally wrapped up in self and not thinking of helping anybody else. We were full of fear. This is an epidemic in our country today. Fear rules our politics, let's be honest. It rules our decision-making. It rules our policies. It rules our racism and our bigotry and prejudice and it's epidemic, and it's really odd that at a time when we have more information available to people, to be educated and or be tolerant of others, we're like less tolerant than ever of others. It's kind of odd. But again, we were full of fear. Think about this morning if you woke up in fear, worried about growing old, worried about whether or not you've got a surgery coming up, worried about whether or not you're going to have enough money to pay your bills, full of fear. We were unhappy. I heard a guy in a movie say that one time. I've never met a truly happy person. Have any of you? Now, if you go to our program, we have lots of happy people in there. Happy, shining people, as the REM used to sing about. But, we were unhappy. How many people in America alone are unhappy today? The sentiment is not good, right? We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Real help meaning making a difference in their life. We're very lucky in our groups that you get to be so involved with others and help them on such a deep level that you're constantly giving feedback, like my friend Dan gave me last night when he poloed me and told me how thankful he was that he got along with his ex-wife today, because his ex-wife is able to help his father while he's in the hospital because she's a nurse. And he said, to use your words, Dan, she just as soon piss on my grave back in the old days. And, that's a miracle. And I got to play some role in that. And now he's feeding that back to me. I got to be real help to him. We just had a storm go through here, and the people there are helping clean up, helping people cut their trees and put their roofs back together. Can't seem to be of real help to other people. And basically, we were just unhappy is the major one. Now, these are all on page 52 of our Alcoholics Anonymous textbook. But if you turn a little bit further into the book, later on, after doing the steps, the 12 steps, there's this interesting change that happens to us that he addresses every single one of these areas in the promises. And these promises are read at every one of our meetings, but I think people have become so numb to them, they don't really think them through about how deep they are. So it says, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. What phase of our development? Well, this comes in step 9 in the book. Many people confuse that and think they should be getting the promises after step 5. No, you're getting the step 5 about midway through you're getting the promises midway through your amends. Okay, this is in step 9. So again, painstaking about your amends, you will be amazed before you're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Do you know what a promise that is? Can anybody even imagine out there a happiness you have never known before? A happiness you don't even know anything about? Dan, do we not have that in this program?
We do for sure.
And does every newcomer look at us goofy when we tell them that?
Yes, they do.
And then after they get it, do they say, good, you were right?
Yeah.
It's astounding. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. You know what that means? It means fear is gone. What I've done in the past, I'm free of it. It doesn't haunt me any longer. It doesn't bother me any longer. To be honest with you, the only way I know how to describe it is it feels like it happened to somebody else. By the time you do the 12 steps, I don't care what happened to you, even abuse, even if it's something you did that was horrible, it feels like it was a different person, different time, and it just doesn't exist anymore. It's odd. It's very odd how it doesn't bother you anymore. We will not regret. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. How many people out there do you know that are peaceful? Do you know anybody in your life that you interact with that seems peaceful? When you go around them, their energy is chill, and they just make you feel good. It's hard in this hard world to be peaceful. But we will know that, serenity and peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. I don't care if you're the scummiest of scumbags, we have use of your experience. In fact, those people that are the most hardened, scabbed up, scuffed up, bruised up, bloodied people in AA, there are tough top veterans to help some people get sober. I know that. Look at the episode with Travis. Travis is a tool in the master's hand to help a lot of people because of his experience being at the lowest of lows. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Wow, really? I won't have to feel self-pity anymore? Sit around feeling sorry for myself? Uselessness? And it's interesting as I'm going through these promises, if you're in the program and you think you've worked the steps and you still don't feel these things, you've done something wrong. because Bill is telling us this is the result, not a result. I even caught the guy last night who's an expert on the steps say a result. No, it's the result of the 12 steps that we get these things. Sorry about that. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain more interest in our fellows. You know what that is? That's called spiritual advancement, spiritual development. Spirituality is all about other-centeredness rather than self-centeredness. When I came in this program, I could not think beyond my nose and my next need. I wanted my next girlfriend. I wanted my next hit. I wanted my next food. I wanted my next... It was all about me. And this program is all about, how can I help this person? How can I get this guy sober? How can I give this guy a ride to the meeting? How can I do, on the way here today, my buddy LJ, you can see his podcast on here. We had some storms go through here, right? And he's going around helping people. And he says, I'll be on the road. I love this shit. I want to help everybody. If you want me to bring you some stuff, I'll bring you something. I get to do some service work. You want something? I'm like, I don't need anything, dude. What do I need? I got everything, right? But I felt like I needed to tell him, yeah, bring me some McDonald's or something. I mean, he's like, I'll bring you anything. You want something? I'll bring you something. I'm out here. I love it. I was like, there you go. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Lose interest in selfish things, gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Now, I'm going to tell you as a hardcore veteran of the program, that doesn't mean it goes away overnight. Self-seeking, which means all your little private pleasures, all the things you like to do for your own feel-goods, it just sort of slips away the more service work you do. If you're not doing service work, you'll find that you'll still be stuck in that. And then many people develop a secondary addiction because of that. They become a food addict, a sex addict, a gambling addict, because that self-seeking still hasn't slipped away. But if you're working with people, guess what? You don't even have the time to pursue your selfish activities because you got to go meet your new person and go through the book. It will slip away over time. Give it time. It will slip away. This is my favorite promise. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. What is a mortal life but your whole attitude and outlook? Every morning, that's your fate. How you're looking at what you're about to go do, your attitude, your outlook is going to determine your whole day, life, year, etc. But it will change. And it changes for the better. He doesn't say that, but it does. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Now, what's interesting about that, he says fear, it doesn't say fear of not being able to pay your bills or not having enough money doesn't leave us. Let me explain that. Fear of people or economic insecurity. Now, what that means is even when we go through the toughest of times, and, life is life, there are going to be times where just people lose jobs, economy tanks, Wall Street takes all your money. That's going to happen. It's happened on my watch. I've seen a lot of economic downturns and a lot of Wall Street robbery in my time. But we're okay. The insecurity that somehow I'm going to be like destitute, or the insecurity that I'm going to lose my sobriety, be out on the streets drinking from a paper bag, it just leaves you. That's not part of the equation. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Dan, how many times have you looked at a newcomer and given them an answer to a problem, and they were baffled, absolutely stuck with no idea how to fix this? And you come out with his gem of wisdom, and he goes, how the hell did you think of that? And what do you say to them?
What do I say when that?
Mm-hmm.
I believe higher power is driving me, and the answers come. These answers that I don't really have come down to me to give to this fella.
So in a nutshell, what we're saying is I have no idea where it came from, right?
Right.
Intuitively. That's what intuitively is. It's not a part of the mind you can control and make happen. It just naturally occurs, right?
Yep.
That flow.
The answer comes.
It's like a wave of God that comes through your head and says, here, tell them this, right?
Yep.
I've been in that position many times. I've been in their position beforehand going, what am I going to tell this guy? He's looking at me like I'm a Yoda. I'm supposed to have the answer to this, right? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, just say this. Whew. Or just tell him to do this. Whew. And it turns out to be the exact perfect thing, right?
It does.
Astonishingly so. All right, so I was told, it was a very powerful demonstration. My sponsor did this with me. Mm-hmm. He said, if you hate the things we talked about on page 52, which is all that shit I just described, and you like the things we just talked about on page 82, guess what? Do 30 pages of work and you can get there. 30 pages of easy work will determine whether you live or die with alcoholism, whether or not you'll have a happy life, and whether or not you'll be happy, joyous, and free like we are in the program. And yet, every day in my group, I have to fight people to even give it a try. We're talking about people who are about to lose everything. They've already lost their kids. They don't have custody of their kids. They're facing prison time. They don't have a place to live. Don't know where their next meal's coming from. And they're going to fight me over doing 30 pages of work just to see if it freaking works. Because yes, in the big book, 30 pages is the space between steps 3 and steps 9. And that's the action part of the work. Now, Dan, is there anybody that you've seen do all that work to the best of their ability? Have you seen anybody fail?
No, never.
Have you ever seen anybody want their money back at the end of it?
Never.
And to the contrary, do they thank you to the day they die that it just seems to keep getting better and better their life?
They certainly do.
Right. But isn't it funny that no matter how many times we say that to people, because of their inner condition in my group, and then bring it back to our topic, they can't hear it. It bounces off like bullets off Superman. I got a guy in my group right now, and I was describing it to Dan. I was like, the guy, I look at him on the screen, he looks so uncomfortable. He looks like a guy who hasn't taken a good BM in 10 years. And that stuff is so compacted, and it's got spikes on it, and he looks that uncomfortable on camera. Yet, when you offer him the warm plate of chocolate chip cookies to say, try this will work, this will get you out of this, can't hear it, has pulled away, just withdrawn, just can't accept it, won't try it. And his inner condition is going to kill him. His inner condition of prejudice, his inner condition of ego, his inner condition of I've already determined what that's about, even though I explained to him about, investigation prior to condemnation. I took him to that quote. He thought it was a good quote, but he didn't hit him, didn't change him. Before I turned over to Dan for some thoughts, I wanted to touch on my condition a little bit as an addict or an alcoholic, because I do think there's the general world out there, and this will be my piece. I want to advocate this to the day I die to the best of my ability about our illness, because I do not think the world still doesn't understand what we have. We have all kinds of scientific explanations for the brain science about how people become addicted, and it hijacks your survival system, all that shit. And we have plenty of explanations for, well, he's got, abuse in his background and trauma, and, and he's got some psychological disorders from his family genetics. We know all about that shit, but that still doesn't explain what's wrong with us. And I've never found anything better than this book to describe what's wrong with us. But you have to have a good sponsor to explain what it's saying, because you'll miss it. But just because I'm sober and I work these tools for 41 years does not mean that I don't wake up with the same disease that Dan has and all of our other friends have, no matter what amount of time of sobriety you have. Every morning when I wake up, my disease is right there telling me negative stuff from jump, okay? And that committee in my head of all those voices, it's never positive or supportive. It's always undermining. It's always undercutting. It's always making me doubt. It's always making me wonder, like, is it ever going to work out? Is it not going to work out? I had a person in my group right now tell me that, I just feel like this sense of impending doom. And I wanted to say, yes, that's what we suffer from. That literally, no matter how good things are going, we're like, yeah, that won't last. The other shoe's going to drop. I'm used to that. I'm not used to things going good. And we trust God. And we see God's there. We say, oh, it's great. God got worked out. And then we're still got one eye on the sucker going, I don't know about that guy. He's tricky. He did that now, but he hurt me in the past, right? So we just have this inner malady. It's an illness. It's a psychological disorder. It's a brain mental illness. And the world doesn't get it. I've got psychiatrists that give you all kinds of meds. Doesn't do anything to change my patients. It may calm them down a little bit, make them a little more functional in group. But other than that, it's not fixing their primary problem. And trying to teach people about this thing that I have to pick up these tools to treat that inner condition on a daily basis. If not, I'm batshit crazy. And I listen to my other addicts and alcoholics, one of which is a very famous comedian, has his own podcast. He's a full-blown alcoholic, sober 27 years or something. Not going to meetings right now, being very candid about that, and I'm listening to him get sicker in his mind with fear and with worry, anxiety, and And, it's not going to work out. I just know it's not, I'm just probably work out, but I'm just worried it's not going to work out. And, distrust of other people and resentment and taking things too personally and being touchy, because he didn't mean it that way, but I took it that way, fuck you. And that little bite in our fucking tone, man. And it can happen so quickly. And yet, I watch people come in for help for this condition. This is why we're using, folks. I'm using to tamper that down because I don't want to hurt somebody today. I don't want to get arrested today. I don't want to jump out in front of traffic and cause a problem. That's what I'm tampering down when I'm using. I'm like, oh, okay, I can breathe. All right, good. I got my stuff. I'm okay. Right? That's what we're doing. And I see these guys come in for help, and they're not being explained what's wrong with them. And instead, we've got treatment centers in Kentucky here telling them Jesus is the way. Just believe in God, and you'll be okay. And they're not teaching them a damn thing about their disease. We got other places down here teaching them how to recite clever little sayings and to read this book back and forth and even write it. Write the big book. That'll get you sober as a punishment. Yes, they do that in one of our facilities. And those guys can quote this. They can teach it. They can read it better maybe than I can. They can't stay sober. Why? They haven't found the toolkit to treat their inner condition, and they don't even know what their inner condition is. Instead, they think, well, I'm just, I'm a sinner. That's my problem. I'm a sinner, and I shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. And, it was wrong of me to do that. And, and now I'm going to try and be a good person. That's not a good plan for an alcoholic. I'm going to try to be a good person. Good luck with that one. Dan will tell you, it blows up hard. And then, like I said, we got our friend recently who ended up in the hotels with the hookers again. And I'm like going, dude, how well do you know this book? And how many times have you been around the program? Fellow was actually running a halfway house. Cannot stay sober. Why? I'm too damned uncomfortable inside my skin and I don't know what's wrong with me. And the only option, if I don't have any treatment for that, as it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds, is I got to press that fuck you button. I don't give a shit. Fuck you. I'm doing it. That is alcoholism. That is what Dr. Silkworth saw in Bill when he said you're irritable, restless, discontent. That is our inner condition. And it's a miracle we don't kill each other in our meetings with everybody coming in with that every night. Before we have the meeting, that condition may not have been treated that day. Maybe that guy didn't do his morning prayers. And maybe he did no meditation. Maybe he's had a bad day at the office. And that guy comes screaming into the meeting. And without treatment, it's astounding that we don't kill each other with all of us having that inner condition off the rails. So learning about that, talking about that, opening up a dialogue. When was the last time any of y'all brought that up at one of your home groups? I want to talk about my inner condition and stop lying that everything is perfect in my life because I'm 10 years sober. Everything is great inside Christopher's head because he's 41 years sober. No, I still have a mental illness that I have to treat every day to the best of my ability, not perfectly. I'm not one of those guys who's going to sit here, well, I meditate this long. And I heard the guys doing this on the tape last night. I read this many spiritual books a day. I said, that's ego, dude. I don't want to hear that. I just want to hear what works to tamper that down, man. And nowadays, this is what's so crazy. All that noise is there, but people don't see it. People in my life would say, what are you talking about, Christopher? You're chill, man. You care about people. You're one of the nicest people. And my patients will say that. And yes, I am because of these tools. But inside, without these tools, I'll fall apart fast. I'll go relapse. I can relapse just like anybody else. I don't kid myself at all on that one, bro. And I think that's why I'm sober as long as I am. I am as vulnerable as anybody else. But are you treating your inner condition today, or are you bullshitting yourself and your sponsor as saying everything's fine? How many times do you hate that when your sponsor calls you, Dan, says, I'm just checking in, say everything's good.
Yeah, no.
And you know it's a lie, right?
Yeah.
We're saying lies about ourselves, though, because are we telling our own sponsor that we're not really good inside? So again, it's just a different approach to recovery, and the approach I was taught was the goal is to be human. Bill said we're not saints. I don't want to be a saint. I want to be able to be a respectable person that people will think fond of, and maybe when I die, somebody might come visit my grave and say he was a good guy. That's it. right? But if I'm not treating my inner condition, I'm going to leave behind a lot of wreckage. I'll end on this and get you in here, Dan. One other thing the speaker said the other night, he says, I heard a lady say the other night, alcoholics and addicts are wonderful people. And he looked at her and said, are you out of your mind? And she looked at him like, what do you mean? He said, in this room alone, there's probably 14,000 amends that still haven't been done, and the people we've done that to wouldn't think we were so wonderful. So what makes us so wonderful? Now, I understand both sides of that. We are wonderful people. We are very loving, giving people. But we can be real assholes. Can we not, Dan, if we're not treating our inner condition?
Certainly, if we're not treating our condition.
How many people can we hurt? Untold number.
Yeah.
Untold number. The tornado through people's lives because I'm not treating my condition. And I treat it with the steps. I treat it with the principles. The principles are our guides to progress. So when I get into trouble, it's like, what's the principle? Well, all right, you could get away with something at work here, but that's not the right thing to do. So honesty is the principle, so be honest. And it's that simple to work a program once you get practice at it. So what are some thoughts on this, Dan, your inner condition and being honest about what goes on in our crazy head? Like if we had a video monitor that really showed people what we thought during the day, we'd all be locked up, right?
Yeah, that's what Don Major used to say. He said, I think it was Don, it may be in Burns, but one of them two guys said there's a movie screen in the back of his head, and if you only saw what was playing all day long, you wouldn't think so highly of him. It says in there that maintenance of the spiritual condition, right? So that's what I got to do, and as you said, it's not that it's got to be perfect, but I have to do it. And there's certain things I have to do every day. I do. And it becomes a part, it says it becomes a working part of the mind. It just, after a while, now and again, you got to like reel it in and focus when certain catalysts poke you, but for the most part, I can pretty much rely on this stuff. And this is just who Dan is today. He gets up in the morning and he prays, and he spends a few minutes in silence, which you could call meditation. And, and the different thing, I go to my home group, I talk to my fellows, I have these things that keeps me out of myself, that that in like third step, it relieves me of the bondage of me, the bondage of self, because that's what I'm really concerned about. That's what I'm mostly thinking about all the time, is what am I going to get and what's going to happen to me and how can I get more of that, and it keeps that stuff at bay. A couple stories, in the beginning, whenever I got here and I heard them saying this, and I'm brand new, right? And they're saying, something keeps hitting me. I hear them saying, spiritually sick. You're spiritually sick. You're spiritually sick. And I don't know if they were saying you are or they were calling themselves. I could just hear that. And my initial thing is like I didn't know anything about it. And my initial thought is that, these people are telling me I ain't going to church enough.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. I wasn't going to church at all. But that's what I heard, and like I like to say, I did find out that later on, actually what had happened is this inner thing of me, this, like you said, this spirit, this essence, this soul, there's a whole lot of words for that, whatever this thing is that makes Dan Dan. It's like a virtual fingerprint. Nobody's got the exact same one I got, that had gotten sick over time. It had gotten ill, and I needed some medicine. I needed some tools to heal that. And these steps are the perfect thing for a guy like me to heal that up, where I go in and look at myself through a 4-step, tell somebody about it in a 5th step, go out and do my forgiveness prayers in the 8th step, ask God to remove these things in the 7th step, and then eventually end up out there knocking on doors, owning my shit and making amends out in the world. Ends up healing that almost like a chemotherapy or something. It fixes this thing in me, but I have to keep doing it. Just that one time through, like you said, I had to keep, I say work the steps and practice these principles in your daily life. I can't just work the steps. That ain't enough. I got to employ these principles as I move through my day every single day in order to keep this monster at bay that wants to get loose in me.
It's interesting, too, when you're talking about working the principles and how simple it can be, because sometimes I sit back and I try to think through the mind of the newcomer when we're talking about work. First of all, using that word work freaks them out. Yeah. It's not really that hard work to do what we do to stay sober today. But, people have this worry about, do I believe in God or not believe in God and all that when they come in, and, do I have to believe in God? It's not about belief. I don't even know if I believe in God some days. It really depends on the day. Depends on what's going on in the world, right? But I do believe that Christopher's not the greatest power on earth. And you see the difference? I'm able to have that humility that if Christopher is not the greatest power on earth, then maybe he doesn't know everything. So maybe he needs to listen. Maybe he needs to be quiet and not just act out. And maybe he needs to wait and pause before he's agitated. And then answers might come. And that humility is the principle of having a higher power. And that's more important to me than whether I believe in God or not, or even go to church. It's whether or not I can work this tool to stay in the pocket and be right-sized. That's another problem with us. We're not right-sized with our inner condition, you know. I just was talking to somebody right before the podcast who was explaining to this person at work is 3 months sober, and the guy's out of his mind talking about all this crazy stuff that makes no sense, and nobody else sees it, but because my friend's in the program, my friend's going, ooh, he's sick. He's got issues. And it's like, you know, but he can't even see it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, didn't mean to interrupt you there, but what else were you saying?
I remember, I love that I love that little piece of saying, do you have what's on page 53? Do you want what's on page 83? Do what's in between. And I have my person hold those pages in between there to feel just how little bit of work that really is.
That's a good idea.
It looks like a big monster. This book has got, what has it got, 500 pages in it? Mm-hmm. But most of it's stories.
Right.
And then like that meat and potatoes of just that little bit, I make them feel those pages in their book on just how little it is to get from 3 to 7. It's not a mountain. It's not. So I love doing that. I remember I was a long time ago. This is 9 and something years ago that I called my sponsor, and I'm telling him just how good a day I've had, about how good the last couple of weeks have been, and man, and I was just a blah 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 blah. And then he stopped me and he said, "Are you about halfway done?" And I thought he was like shutting me down on my storytelling, you know. I'm like, God damn, you told me to share the juice with you. That's all I'm doing. And he goes, no, man, are you about halfway done with your amends? And it was before I was halfway done. And that I will never forget that because of the shock. You got that especially back when you was a newcomer, still do it to some extent, but that little shocking little statement that just like stops me in the tracks, man. It's like, boom, what was that? Like we talked about before when you said, talk to a guy and he's going on and on, you say, fuck you. You go, did my sponsor just say? But that time, and that was the truth. It was before I was halfway through, and so many things good were going in my life, and I was feeling good. My inner condition was good for, you know, maybe one of the first times in a long time where it was actually feeling, or I felt peace and serenity, and I felt useful to people, and all the stuff that's in those promises was happening to me. And again, I tell that story quite often to my newcomers, and if I get a chance, I'll drop it too, because you do get that opportunity once in a while when that guy's sharing the juice with you, and you get to say, "Are you about halfway done?" That was a good time.
I'll go even further, though. I think that's the best I had felt in my inner condition in my life.
Yeah.
Having grown up in an alcoholic family system, I never knew peace. Not really. I never really knew freedom from self. It was all about, you know, oh, Dad's going to be drunk. What's going to happen today? You know, freak out, you know. And so, yeah, man, first time in my life, it was and this can happen for everybody, guys. This is not limited to addicts and alcoholics. Look around our world out there at the so-called normal people. How peaceful do they seem? How happy are they? You know, all that. Do they have a smile on their face? And that's what this heals. This changes your inner condition, which is why I keep doing it. Because of the results, right? And I'm not doing this to be a saint or to be some sort of special person. I'm doing this because it's the only thing, and I've read a lot of damn books and looked at a lot of places, it's the only thing I've found that actually freaking works, right?
Yeah, it does, yep. And it's it's a set of guidelines for how to do life is what I say. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. And now I actually have a plan and a framework of a successful way to do life, and it's working out really, really good.
So if you have a sponsee today, let's say, and they call you up and they're like, "Arr!" and you say, "Oh, how's your inner condition?" Point that out to them, because again, I still think saying that it's contingent on our spiritual condition makes them feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be studying the big book and like the Bible, and I'm supposed to be, you know, going to, you know, no, dude, you got to treat those feelings. Those feelings are, if you don't treat them, they're going to treat you. Resentment, right? Anger. You've got to deal with those. but we run, of course. We don't want to deal with them. So, any other thoughts you might have on the inner condition or anything that crossed your mind?
It's still, we've said it 100 times. It's been since the beginning of time that these great teachers have been telling us it's an inside job, and this is just another piece of that. I got to treat this thing that's on the inside. I'm not going to get it from outside.
And let's start a little bit of a movement. Okay, me being the shit stirrer sometimes. Within meetings to talk about this, because I do not see anybody talking about their inner condition. They're talking about, well, my girlfriend and I had a fight today. I got a burning desire. Well, no, where's your inner condition in that? Did you bring an inner condition into that? How's your inner condition during that? And then how's your inner condition after that? And a little bit of honesty at meetings, because again, I do think there's this weird thing. I see it in old timers. I'm sorry, I do. Maybe you don't, Dan, but I see that they get old timer-itis where they just sort of sit there like everything's good. And that's bullshit. It can't be all good in life. This world is imperfect. And it's filled with a lot of stupid people doing stupid shit. There's no way it could be good all the time. And besides, that's just not natural. It's yin and yang. Life is up, life is down. Life is light, life is dark. So I'd love to have that honesty. And if you don't find it in your own group, start one. You'd be amazed how many people are wanting a group where people can talk about their real shit, and and not have to keep that facade that everything's all good because I'm sober. One of the biggest things I run into in my group, and it's been a big one in the particular group I have right now, is this idea that it sounds like, this is what somebody said. He said, it sounds like Jim Jones drink the Kool-Aid rah-rah bullshit. And I said, yeah, I can see that. And then I got that person to go to our meeting recently, and everybody that got up did a Jim Jones rah-rah drink the Kool-Aid speech. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to think I coached them to do that. I don't know. Sometimes can we oversell this, Dan? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And not be honest about, life still sucks, man, sometimes.
Yep,
it's part of life.
Yep. I'm not having a lot, there's some pretty tough spots in my life right now with Dad sick, man. It sucks. It does fucking suck. You had said something earlier, to keep it at bay by talking about it, to discharge that negative energy that's invading me against my will. I don't want any of this, but I do have, I use these tools. But yeah, it is, we can end up, overselling is funny because we do know how powerful this is. And I really feel that I want, I want to sell this thing to everybody because I want them to have it. But this is the yin and yang too, same thing. There probably needs to be a little bit more balance about talking about the dark stuff and getting that out on the table too, 'cause instead of that whole thing about I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm fine.
Or I hate the one of my old friends used to say all the time, if I was any better, it'd be a sin, or some kind of bullshit like that, or I don't deserve how good I feel. And it was always the same thing. They could never get a different answer out of them. And I was like, God, can't you just be honest?
Yeah.
I, as an old timer, would tell y'all to run from those people that keep giving the same glib response. Those are the guys that are going to blow up. Those are the guys that are going to take an AK out and hurt people. Get away. Get as far away as you can, man. But I think it's good to represent that to the newcomer. And again, I've had great teachers myself, and that's what Dr. Burns Brady did. He showed his ass at meetings several times. And, you're going through a very unfair, unjust, fucked up situation with your dad decaying and going through the process of death. That is completely unfair that we have to deal with that as human beings. It's just forced on us. We didn't ask for that. We're thrown into this deal. We didn't ask to be born, but we're here. And then they're telling, oh, by the way, you're going to go through this process of losing everybody you care about before you die, and then you're going to go through that process. And to watch him become more debilitated, to watch him lose facilities, to sometimes not be in his mind, and he's not coherent, and to see your own parent have to go through that. If you're going to put a smile on your face and tell me that everything's fine and not process those feelings, screw you, man. That's not real. Does it make sense? Yeah. And you've done a great job venting that stuff out of me. You have expressed feelings like a champion. But what would you say to any newcomer just so they feel secure and know that, dude, it's a safe place. Our meeting should be a safe place to be able to discharge that energy.
Yeah. Well, with my, the newcomer, but, really the only place I have any real influence is with the guys I work with. And I demonstrate that when you did it with me, demonstrated that everything don't have to be okay all the time. You're free to to talk about this stuff. And as a matter of fact, I've got a few guys right now. It seems that there's a wave through the universe once in a while where there's just a lot of people going through a lot of stuff at the same time, and they're doing a good job of venting that stuff off, and you got to let them do it too, and there is I can't say stuck in it. There's a line in there someplace, but my guys do a pretty good job of making sure they get to me when things are crappy and get it out of their system and talk about it.
I do think we'll wrap it up here, but I do think there's a holdover effect from how strong most of our religious programming was. And I do see that programming filter into the program with the way people act about things. Back in the day, I can clearly hear my own church saying, well, just have faith. God will take care of it. Everything will be fine. You don't lose faith. You must be a strong believer. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And yet we've had teachers like Thomas Merton, one of the greatest Christian writers in the history of mankind, write, you cannot have faith without doubt. That's from a guy that dedicated his whole life to being an ascetic, ascetic Trappist monk, somebody that wouldn't even enjoy earthly pleasures of any kind. Again, I worry that we lose newcomers sometimes because we are so, we're not talking about our true inner condition, and we're just telling them, quoting the book. I heard somebody doing that today. Oh my God, you should have seen the group. Nobody was listening. Nobody was listening. It's like, you can only, did you hear any quotes out of the book after a certain point? Like what, after quote number 5, Dan, as a newcomer, did you retain any of that shit at your first meetings?
It's like Charlie Brown's teachers talking.
You're just like, when's this guy going to shut up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet I don't know how to reach this person to be a nice way to tell them that, man, I have a way I can show you to help you really be a kick-ass speaker. But, always keep it on yourself, guys. Always talk about your own experience and use the word I. Don't say you or we, and don't quote the book too much, and just talk about your experience, and you'll have people eating out of your hand. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap it up on this portion of the show. Now we're going to feed into our questions, and we have 2 good questions for today, so we'll get to that. By the way, if you want to send your questions to us, it's at iam12recovery@gmail.com. Again, that's iam12recovery@gmail.com, and we want to hear from you. Comments, questions, jokes, concerns, we'll take them all. If you want to know what to name your dog, we'll give it our best shot. But this is a free service we offer so you can get some feedback. And everybody's got issues they're dealing with in life and in recovery. Send us your issues. We'll help you with them. We'd love to help you. All righty, we're going to get going with the questions portion. First question this week is very short. Wish it was longer. If you want to flesh it out and send us more information, it would be more helpful, I believe. But I do want to address it for you. It says, how do you handle someone in your group being disrespectful to you? Now, I would need a little bit more information to know what level of disrespectful and what do you consider disrespectful. But I'll just take it on faith, go by what I think is disrespectful. In other words, maybe they're talking behind your back. Maybe they're spreading rumors about you, or they're saying they're taking your inventory. They're putting down what you shared at the meeting later, things like that. I don't know what level of disrespect's going on. But I have some guidelines I can offer to you first off. The first thing we have to know is that we sink or swim together. And that was pressed on me early, that unity factor, which is one of the 3 legs of recovery that keeps it together, the triangle. Without unity, we will blow up, and then AA and NA and the 12 steps won't be there for our grandchildren. So it's not that serious that you can't, if it gets worse enough, just go to another meeting. Vote with your feet. I was taught that by my sponsor. If it gets that bad, this guy's not going to respect me. First thing I would do personally is I would get them alone and try to talk to them. And I would say, look, this is what I see. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Well, let me back up. First thing I would do is call my sponsor and run it past my sponsor and get his feedback and get a game plan on how I should approach this so I don't end up punching the guy, because he might say something that will make you mad. And so then when you have your game plan, you go in there and you say that. You say, hey, man, I'm picking up vibes that you don't like me, or there's vibes you're being snarky or sarcastic behind my back, and what's that all about, dude? And then let him sit there and try and give you an answer. If he dances or, whatever, and you can press him, say, well, I don't appreciate it, and I'd really appreciate if we could be principles before personalities, and we just, try to get along as 2 fellow addicts. You have a different story. You have a different way of looking at it. We just recently had someone leave our group for a difference of opinion over something, and I was very sad over that because it shouldn't have to happen. It shouldn't have to get to that level. I do believe that almost anything can be talked out. Maybe not world war, but almost anything can be talked out of if both parties are willing to lay aside their egos and work it out. Now, that's not always possible to get both sides to agree to let go of their grudge or their ego and let's talk it out, because they just get their feelings hurt, right? That's the problem. We emotional creatures get ourselves panties up in a bunch, and then I don't want to hear anything the person has to say, right? So I first would go and approach them, try to get a reasonable conversation going. And at that point, if they're not going to stop doing it, again, it's so hard to answer this without knowing exactly what they're doing. But I don't know. I might even be bold enough to call it out. I might even be bold enough to call a home group meeting and say that's the process when you're dealing with group business, especially if it's occurring in the groups and it may be affecting the mood for the newcomer coming in the door. That would be a very important reason to have a home group and say, hold up, guys, we got some disharmony, some disunity in the group, and I'm going to address it. And I'm worried about how that's going to affect the new person who may pick up that there's some cliques in here or there's some personal gossip stuff going on behind people's back, and I'm just not going to play that game. I'm going to call it out. And you might even tell the person when you're talking to them, hey, you know what, bud, if we can't work this out, I may bring it up in a home group and deal with it there if you're not going to cop to what's going on. And then they're going to say, well, you do whatever you want. And then you have the right to do whatever you want. But I wouldn't sit on it. And you're going to have to make a decision about how important that group is to you. If it is important to you, I'd encourage you to fight for it with your life. I would never let anybody make me leave my home group. I tried to coach this person I was talking about earlier about that. Don't let anybody drive you away from your group. Not any person. They're just an addict, sick, alcoholic like you. I don't care how much time they have. I don't care if it's a guy with 50 years sobriety. Don't let any jerk, anybody that's not working their tools, any fellow sick addict or alcoholic drive you off. That's ridiculous. He's just sick as you are. You guys are equal. There's no hierarchy here that he should know better. No, he's another sick addict. Duh. He's going to say fucked up things. We do that sometimes. So encourage you strongly. If you want to stay there, fight for it. If you don't, vote with your feet and say, my energies are best served elsewhere. And we've done that. That's how we started Spiritual Underground, is we left another group because me and another guy said, I don't like the vibe in here, and I'd like to have a different type of group. And a wonderful miracle happened out of that. So maybe God's trying to get you a little goose on the ass to get you moving. I don't know. But I really wish you had given us a little bit more information. When y'all send in your questions, guys, we love stories. Now, I'm not asking you to write a page. I'm not going to read pages of stuff. But give us a couple of paragraphs, like, when she said this, and then I said that, and then this. It just makes it more entertaining for the people listening. Okay. So that's my answer. Dan, any thoughts on that? Has anybody ever been disrespectful to Dan the man? I doubt it. How could they dare, right? But
well, I remember having some problems when I was new with some people, and I don't know if that's the other thing. You know, I look back and was that really me, or was there really something going on? A couple times in places where I didn't want to come back to a meeting because of certain people's actions and behaviors towards me, treating me treating me disrespectful as a newcomer. But like you said, really need some context underneath it there to see to be able to better answer it. Like what kind of activities, what are we talking about? You know, that's a little bit broad. When you come in the door, is he calling you names, or is he, like you said, talking behind your back, or what's going on? But you answered it beautifully, and I think you do have to stand up for yourself. And that's one thing, you know, I'm going to bet this person that sent in the question probably is relatively early in their recovery and doesn't have like that boots under them that you get after a while, where you learn to stand up for yourself and you can go up and talk to a man and say, hey, what's going on? This is going with me. And because it is tough. Let's just say this other guy's got more time than this guy writing the question, you know, and you get into that kind of little thing and he doesn't want to go, finds it tough to go confront the dude. But the sponsor's the right answer too. Talk to him first and come up with a game plan. And who knows, man? Your sponsor might say, well, I will talk to him.
That's true. That's very true. Your sponsor might take the bullet for him. I love what you gave a different angle to it, though, about maybe this is a growth spot for this person, that they need to learn how to stand up for themselves. And, I don't know why. It's not just us, because I hear other guys, I hear famous people on podcasts talk about there's this difficult thing with men that we know it can become physical at a certain point. So we're going and we're looking you in the eye. We're trying to reason this out. But there's always that thought, like, is he going to throw a punch at me or am I going to throw a punch at him? And, and it's even more difficult with women because, don't hit a woman, right? So, but that thing about being challenged that, wait a minute, I need to step up for my ground and not take shit anymore. And I need to go and say, this bothers me, and be honest, share my experience.
Calm, frank, and open.
Calm, frank, and open. That's the way we're supposed to do amends. And look them in the eye. That was the thing that caught my ear when you said that. How hard was that for us to do that before we came into recovery, right?
Terribly difficult.
Yeah. I was a shoe guy, as Keith Lewis says.
Yeah.
I was always looking at your shoes. So if you want to write us back with more information or to tell us what happened, we would love that. But one thing you don't want to do that I think is dangerous is to let it just slide if it bothers you. Don't stuff things anymore. That is old behavior, and I think it's dangerous. Turns into real resentment and could be a relapse trigger. So, you did good here to bring it to us. But next time, give us a story. Give us a few paragraphs, guys. I can't, I want to help. But it's more interesting if you say, they did that and then they did this. All right, second question for today. Thank you, gentlemen, for the great podcast. This guy don't know us too well, does he? You're a gentleman, Dan. Gentleman Dan. I love listening to it while I'm at work. Lots of amazing information and knowledge. Blows my mind sometimes. Hell yeah, love that. So here's the question. How do you celebrate yourself? Maybe that's a good question. How do I celebrate myself? How do I separate myself, yourself, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when you are pouring your heart, soul, and energy into helping your sponsees, clients, friends, and family members? I'll repeat that. How do you separate yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when you're pouring your heart, soul, and energy into helping your sponsees, clients, friends, and family members? So there is one line in the big book that I don't know why my teachers didn't necessarily emphasize it, but they pointed it out enough that it's remained a go-to for me, particularly as a professional. And it's short. You ready? You might miss it. It says, remember, they are very ill. Now, if you're not a counselor dealing with absolute insanity on a daily basis, where even my patients, again, said this today as I've heard it a million times, I'd be a millionaire how many times I've heard this. I don't know how you do this, man. I don't know how you do it. I mean, it's making me crazy as a patient just to hear this one day, but you're in here day after day, year after year. I don't know how you do this. And sometimes I don't either, bro. But I work my tools, and that's what gets me through it. I don't know how I carry that load. I don't know how I transitioned from being in the nut house to doing this podcast here. It's insanity. I'm drained from today if you knew what I had to go through today. But when I'm getting heated or it becomes personal, especially if they start attacking back, and that's what addicts do when they're threatened, they always go for the jugular. So it's like, well, screw you, man, and it's like, whoa, you just went from 0 to 10. We were at 4, man. Come on now. And it's hard. It is damn hard. In fact, I just went through a training where they're trying to tell you, even if they spit on you, try to pull back and objectively not react. Really? I'll just be glad I don't work in inpatient anymore. That's all I can say about that. If you spit on me, I don't know. It may be on. I might throw down and lose my job over that. But remember, they are very ill. They don't even know what they're saying. It's kind of like, as odd as it sounds, it's kind of like Christ on the cross saying, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. And they're all looking at him like, what? What did he say? He's still alive? What did he say? If you're going to choose to help other addicts and alcoholics, you've got to have a great support system yourself to ventilate all that energy afterwards. If I don't get that slime off me at the end of walking out of that hospital, and there's some days where I almost feel like I'm suffocating in the hospital, like it's time to go. I need some fresh air. I got to get out of here, right? But if I don't have a place to dump that energy and it builds on me day after day, then you're not going to be any use to any of these new people whatsoever. And if I don't have a bit of a hard shell where I realize they're not coming at me because it's me, they're coming at me because I represent authority, right? Because the court ordered them here and I'm the counselor that can determine whether they did the program or not or kick them out. I try to disabuse my patients of that right away. First off, I talk to them like a fellow addict, and I think that's rare. I actually know it's rare. I've had more than my share of patients come through and say that they didn't get anything out of a counselor that was not an addict or an alcoholic. Now, I don't think that has to be. I don't think that you can be not an addict or an alcoholic, be very effective. But when I was more candid about it, the more I've gotten secure in my recovery, the better recovery rates I was finding among my patients. And yet we're coached as professionals to be very careful about sharing our recovery. And definitely don't share your home group and all the other shit they tell you. So I've gotten a lot more lax on that. And so it's made me more on their level. So whenever they're coming at me with that energy, if this is helpful to you, I'll say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not your probation officer. I'm not the guy that brought you here. I'm not the judge. I'm not your mama. I don't want to do any of those things, dude. I'm here to help you. All your problems you got right now, you're yelling at the one guy that can help you get out of those. So be careful what we're saying here. And when I've done that, they actually check themselves. I've seen that happen. They'll sort of go, oh, yeah, I know, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. But if I escalate as they escalate, then I'm being unprofessional. And I'm taking it personally. And you got to be, that fine line, dude. You know, we get these nurses that come in for training and they sit in our sessions and I always ask them afterward, what'd you think? And they're just kind of like, it's definitely educational. Because they're just like, what the hell? And I warn them, you're going to see a lot of these people as patients and they won't have any idea they're addicts and alcoholics, but maybe this training with me today helped you. Oh, dude, what was I saying, Dan? Where was I going with that?
I don't know, man.
You weren't listening, so you don't know.
Yes, I was too. I was listening. I was actually listening so much that the clock almost turned over. I don't have any personal experience with that, but I can totally understand it, and I watch you navigate it like a pro. Again, I'll tag on to what everybody else says. I don't know how you do it, because sometimes just like sponsees are enough for a day. You know, it's like, I need some space. Do not disturb my phone for a little while. Because some days it rains, some days it pours, and you do it every single day with really fresh people, not months sober, days sober. Most of them are under 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. If that, they're sometimes, unfortunately, because of the medical care system, you cannot get inpatient care anymore unless it's going to kill you. Yeah. And it's a liability, which means benzos or alcohol. So they're sending a live meth head to my group. Yeah. How's that going to work? On Zoom, mind you. Zoom, a live meth head. Well, we got a live one today. I did remember what I wanted to say. I will tell the nurses it's okay to feel at times, as you're dealing with these folks, that you want to punch them right in the face. It's okay to feel that way. Just don't do it, because you'll lose your license. You might get fired. But that's normal. So maybe for you who wrote this question, allow yourself to be human and have the feelings, but also one of the other tools we have as professionals is we need to have a supervisor that can help us guide us with our dilemmas. And that was very much coached at my old facility. It's not so much at the facility I work with now, but we had official supervisors that we checked in with once a week to process this stuff. Like, this situation came up and I don't know if I handled it the best way. That's very healthy. I like that. So I think this person knows me. If you ever want to call me or talk or whatever, we can do that. But again, you're there to help them. Don't let your spirit of wanting to help them and serve your higher power get killed by their ugliness because they're sick. They can't help it. They literally can't help it. If I'm going to work with a rabid dog and be a dog whisperer, I can't get mad at the dog for going, ah! And I watch these guys on these videos. They're like, okay, I'll see what I'm doing here. I'm asserting dominance. I'm just holding him. He's calm. He's getting calm. That's what I'm doing with these guys every day. But they don't respect me. I mean, just today they said, yeah, when I came in here, I thought you're full of shit. Again, another thing that if I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I'd be a millionaire. That's the thanks you get for helping save their lives. I thought you were full of shit. That's about all you get sometimes. But any other thoughts on that, Dan?
Nope.
All right. So that's hopefully helpful. If not, write us. Give us some feedback and what happened afterward. So we're going to do this every week, guys. We have a different topic. If you have a topic you would like us to cover in recovery, that is something else you can send to iam12recovery@gmail.com. We literally are going to go through as many as we can think of. But if you have a situation in your life, you say, hey, that would be a good topic for a podcast, bring it to us. We'll talk about it. But thank you for being here. And we hope that this has helped you get through your week and give you a few tools to have a good life. That's what this is all about, man. We want a better life, all of us, right? Always want better. That's the human condition. It's okay. That's healthy to do that. So we'd like to close every podcast with the Serenity Prayer. If you would like to join us at home, please feel free. And the prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Woohoo! Come back and see us. We love you. Peace out.